Darkcast Network. Out of the shadows comes the best of indie podcasts.
The Texarkana Moonlight Murders was a series of four unsolved serial murders and related violent crimes committed in the Miller County, Arkansas, and Bowie County, Texas regions in early 1946. They were attributed to the alleged unidentified perpetrator known as the Phantom Slayer. These horrifying events that occurred during a 10-week period inspired the story The Town That Dreaded Sundown. My name is DJ, and this is the Mythical True Crime Podcast. Hello, and welcome to tonight's show. This is the first of my series I'm starting this summer called the Summer of Love series. All of the stories that I will be doing for the next few weeks will be inspired by Lover's Lane. For example, tonight's episode is about the Town That Dreaded Sundown murders. Later, we're going to do the Monster of Florence. And of course, we couldn't end a summer series without talking one of the most infamous serial killers, the Son of Sam. So stick around, and if you enjoy this or any other episodes of my podcast, please consider subscribing. Subscribing lets me continue to do the work that I've been doing, and also produce more episodes. So if you like it, share it. Also leave a comment. I enjoy reading them, and I also take suggestions. So if there's something you'd like to hear, let me know in the comments below. I'm on all social media platforms: Facebook, Twitter, well, now X, Threads, and Instagram. As for tonight's Summer of Love series, we're talking about the Texarkana Moonlight Murders. Those consisted of four violent attacks that occurred over 10 weeks from February to May 1946. The murders occurred in or around Texarkana, which is a twin cities that border the Miller County, Arkansas, and Bowie County, Texas regions. All four attacks targeted heterosexual couples on isolated locations on weekend nights. Many cultures have what's called a lover's lane. A lover's lane is defined usually as a secluded area where people can do many adult activities such as kissing, making out, even engaging in sexual activity. These areas range from parking lots to secluded rural areas that takes to places with extraordinary views of the city or other iconic features. The Oxford English Dictionary records the use of the phrase lover's lane all the way back in 1853. While some traditional paths still maintain the name, in more recent generations, lover's lane is often found in cultures built around the automobile. Lovers often make out in a car or van for privacy. These attacks that took place in Texarkana took place at intervals of 3 to 4 weeks. Investigators speculated that the attacks were the work of an unidentified serial killer. Now, the first attack occurred around 11:45 on Friday, February 22nd. A man named Jimmy Hollis and his girlfriend, Mary Jean Larry, parked in a secluded road just outside Texarkana, Texas, after having seen a movie together. The lover's lane was approximately 300 feet from the last row of city homes, where present-day Central Mall is located. Around 10 minutes later, a man wearing a white cloth mask, which resembles a pillowcase with eyes cut out, appeared in Hollis's driver's side door and shone a flashlight through their window. Hollis told him that he had the wrong person, to which the man responded, "I don't want to kill you, fella. So what do I say?" Both Hollis and Larry were ordered out of the car, and the man ordered Hollis to, quote, take off his goddamn britches. After he complied, the man struck him twice in the head with a firearm. Larry later told investigators that the noise was so loud she had initially thought Hollis had been shot, when in fact all she heard was his skull fracturing. Thinking the assailant wanted to rob them, Larry showed him Hollis's wallet to prove he had no money, after which she was struck with a blunt object. The assailant ordered Larry to stand, and when she did, he told her to run. Initially, Larry tried to flee towards a ditch, but the assailant ordered her to run up the road. Larry spotted an old car parked off the side of the road and found it empty, and was again confronted by the attacker, who asked her why she was running. When she said that she was told to do so, he called her a liar before knocking her down and sexually assaulting her with a barrel of his gun. After the assault, Larry fled on foot, running about a half a mile or 800 meters to a nearby house. She woke the inhabitants and phoned the police. Meanwhile, Hollis had regained consciousness and alerted a passing motorist, who also called the police. Within 30 minutes, Bowie County Sheriff W.H. Bill Presley and 3 other officers arrived at the scene, but the assailant had already left. Larry was hospitalized overnight for a minor head wound. Hollis was hospitalized for several days to recover from multiple skull fractures. Hollis and Larry gave slightly differing descriptions of the attacker. Larry claimed that she could see under his mask and that he was a light-skinned African-American male. Hollis alternatively claimed that the attacker was a tanned white man around 30 years old, but conceded that he could not distinguish his features as he had been blinded by his flashlight. Both agreed that the assailant was around 6 feet tall. Law enforcement repeatedly challenged Larry's account and believed that she and Hollis knew the identity of the attacker, however, were covering for him. March 24th, Richard L. Griffin and his girlfriend of 6 weeks, Polly Ann Moore, were found dead in Griffin's car in the morning on Sunday, March 24th, by a passing motorist. The motorist saw the parked car on a lover's lane 100 yards south of U.S. Highway 67 West in Bowie County. Griffin was found between the front seats on his knees and his head resting in his crossed hands and his pockets turned inside out. Moore was found sprawled face down in the back seat. There is evidence to suggest she was placed there after being killed on a blanket outside the car. Griffin had been shot twice inside the car. Both had been shot once in the back of the head, and both were fully clothed. A blood-soaked patch of earth near the car suggested to the police that they had been killed outside the vehicle and then placed back inside. Congealed blood was found covering the running board and also flowed through the bottom of the car door. A .32 caliber cartridge casing was also found, possibly ejected from the pistol wrapped in a blanket. No extant reports indicated that either Griffin or Moore was examined by a pathologist. Local rumors said that Moore had been sexually assaulted, but modern reports refute this claim. Now, on April 14th, there was a second double murder. At around 1:30 in the morning, on Sunday, April 14th, Paul Martin picked up Betty Jo Booker from a musical performance at the VFW Club in West 4th and Oak Street in Texarkana. Martin's body was found at around 6:30 a.m. later that morning, lying on his left side in the northern edge of North Park Road. Blood was found on other side of the road by the fence. He had been shot 4 times, once through the nose, through the ribs from behind, in his right hand, and through the back of his neck. Booker's body was found by a search party at about 11:30 a.m., about 2 miles away, about 3.2 kilometers from Martin's body. Her body was behind a tree, lying on its back, fully clothed. It was posed with the right hand in the pocket of a buttoned overcoat. Booker had been shot twice, once through the chest and once in the face. The weapon used was the same as the first double murder, a .32 caliber Colt pistol. Martin's car was then later found about 3 miles away, 4.8 kilometers from Booker's body, and about a mile and a half away from his body. It was parked outside Spring Lake Park with the keys still at the ignition. Authorities were not sure who had shot first. Presley and the Texas Ranger Manuel Gonzalez said that the examination of the bodies indicated that they both had been put up a terrific struggle. Martin's friend, Tom Appleton, said that he didn't believe an argument had happened between the victims and that Martin had not had any enemies. On Friday, May 3rd, sometime before 9 p.m., Virgil Starks and his wife, Katie, were in their home on a 500-acre farm off of Highway 67 East, almost 10 miles northeast of Texarkana. Now, Virgil was sitting in an armchair reading a newspaper when he was shot twice in the back of the head from a closed double window. Hearing the sound of broken glass, Katie came from the other room and saw Virgil stand up and then slump back into his chair. She then realized he was dead. Katie ran to the crank telephone and called the police. She rang twice before being shot twice in the face from the same window. She fell, but soon regained her footing and tried to get the pistol from another room, but was blinded by her own blood. Katie heard the killer at the back of the house and fled out the front door. She ran barefoot across the street of the home to her sister and brother-in-law. Because no one was home, she ran to the A.V. Prater's house, gasped that Virgil's dead, and collapsed. Prater shot a rifle in the air to summon another neighbor, Elmer Taylor, who Prater had sent to collect his car. Taylor complied, and along with the members of the Prater family, they took Katie and Michael Meager Hospital, which is now Miller County Health Unit. Katie was questioned in the operating room by Miller County Sheriff W.E. Davis, who became head of the investigation. 4 days later, Davis talked to Katie again, and she discounted the circling rumor that Virgil had heard a car outside their home several nights in a row, fearing of being killed. Now, with all of this, law enforcement repeatedly challenged Larry's account of the first attack, believing that she and Hollis knew the identity of their attacker, but were covering for them. Larry returned to Texarkana after the Griffin Moore murders in hopes to help link the cases and identify the killer. But the Texas Rangers questioned her story and insisted that she knew who her attacker was. Officers did not publicly connect the Hollis-Larry attack to the subsequent murders until May 11th, the day after the Texarkana Gazette published an interview with Larry, when Presley and Runnels called on the public to immediately report anyone who had unexplained absences when the murders occurred. Now, in response to the Griffin Moore murders, police launched a citywide investigation along with the Texas and Arkansas police. Over 200 persons were questioned in the case, and about the same number of false leads were checked. In the Martin Booker case, friends, acquaintances, and several suspects were questioned by Bowie County investigators who had worked 24-hour shifts. Gonzalez tried baiting the perpetrator by recruiting teenagers to sit as decoys in parked cars while officers waited nearby. Officers who volunteered as decoys with real partners or mannequins. Now, in the aftermath of the Starks murders, officers from the entire area were called upon to help in the investigation. Blockades were effective on Highway 67 East. Those who had been driving in the area at the time of the slayings, along with several men found in the vicinity, were detained for questioning. By May 5th, 47 officers were working to solve this murder. On May 9th, a mobile radio station arrived in 20 Arkansas with 20 Arkansas state police officers and a fleet of 10 prowl cars equipped with two-way radios to help coordinate the growing investigation. May 11th, a teletype machine was installed in the county sheriff's office to connect with other law enforcement officers in Texas. The unofficial theory for the motive amongst the majority of the officers was that of sex mania. Large amounts of money in the home were not taken, nor was Katie's purse. By March 30th, police had posted a $500 reward in an effort to gain any new information on the case. It's about $8,000 in today's money. However, even with that reward, it produced over 100 false leads with no fruitful clues or suspects. Within days of the Booker Martin murders, the reward fund had exceeded $1,700, which is around $30,000 today. It rose to $113,000 in today's money, $7,025, on the night of the Starks murder, and ended up passing $10,000 or $161,000 in today's money the following 10 days. There was also some hesitation linking the Starks murder with the other crimes because the weapon used was a .22 caliber pistol, and Davis believed it was an automatic rifle, not a pistol. By November 1948, authorities no longer considered the Starks murder connected with the double murders. Now, the public reaction to all this raised many concerns that were generally taken as an isolated incident, specifically the Griffin Moore murders. Officials did not publicly connect the earlier Hollis Larry attack with the murders and the Phantom Killer were active. Martin Booker murders thus greatly alarmed the public in the likelihood of a serial predator. The deaths of these two church-going teens shocked the entire community. Booker had been a popular high school junior, sorority member, and officer in her high school band, a winner of scholastic, literary, and musical prizes, and former Little Miss Texarkana. Her high school ended classes early so that hundreds of kids could attend the funerals. Curfews were set for businesses in an attempt to keep people off the streets at night. It was additionally at this point that the hypothesized serial killer was dubbed the Phantom Slayer by local media. Hysteria grew in the days following the murder of Virgil Starks in his home. There was constant media coverage of an increased police activity, and the Texarkana Gazette stated that on May 5th, the killer would strike again at any moment, at any place, and at anyone. For a week, police were inundated with reports of prowlers. One officer stated that nearly all of the alarm was a result of excitement, wild imagination, and near hysteria.
After this quick message, we'll be right back. If this is your first time tuning in, I encourage you to subscribe to the show so you can hear all the other episodes, as well as what we have coming up in the next few weeks.
Previously, it had been normal for houses to be left unlocked. The murders alarmed residents to taking precautions with security, from locking doors to arming themselves with guns. Some people nailed sheets over the windows. Some nailed windows down, and some even used screen door braces as window guards. The day after Stark's death, stores sold out of locks, guns, ammunition, window shades, and Venetian blinds. Additional items of which sales increased included window sash locks, screen door hooks, night latches, and other protective devices. Because citizens were substantially nervous and armed with guns, Texarkana became a dangerous place. When calling on an address, law enforcement officers would turn on their sirens, stand in the headlights, and announce themselves to keep from being shot by a nervous homeowner. The fear was significant enough to spread to other cities, including Hope, Lufkin, Magnolia, and as far as Oklahoma City, where sales spiked of guns and axes. After 3 weeks without any associated murder, Texarkana's fear began to lessen, and the concern lasted throughout the summer and subsided after 3 months had passed. The rampant spreading of rumors also fed the panic and made police investigations more difficult. On April 19th, Gonzalez held a press conference to dispel rumors that the murderer had been caught. He stated that the rumors circulating among the public and in newspapers were, quote, a hindrance to the investigation and harmful to innocent persons. He stressed this again in a radio interview on May 7th, saying that these rumors only take the officers from the main route of the investigation. It is so important that we capture this man that we cannot afford to overlook any lead, no matter how fantastic it may be. Rumors continued to spread through mid-May, and many people believed that the slayer had been caught. Some believed he had been secretly held in Bowie County Jail, or flown to another jail. The Gazette and news offices were drowned with phone calls, both local and long distance, inquiring about the apprehension of the killer. Presley declared that the innocent people who were being accused of being the Phantom, and asked residents to show more consideration for their fellow citizens. Now, although most of the town was in fear of the Phantom, some youths continued to park on those deserted roads, hoping to apprehend the perpetrator. Johnson and the Arkansas State Trooper were patrolling a vacant road at night, and they came across a parked car. When Johnson approached the car and noticed a couple, he introduced himself and asked if they weren't scared. The girl replied, "It's a good thing you told me who you were," and she revealed that she had been pointing a .25 caliber ACP pistol at him. On the night of May 10th, Texarkana State Police were alerted that a car had been following a bus. They chased it for about 3 miles before shooting the tires out and arresting a man named C.J. Lauderdale Jr., a high school athlete. When questioned at the station, he explained that he was unaware of any policemen because they were driving an unmarked car. He said he was following the bus because he was suspicious of a passenger who had entered from a private car. On May 12th, Gonzalez gave a warning to teenage sleuths in the Gazette, saying, "It's a good way to get yourself killed." Now, the killer, the unidentified killer, I should say, did not acquire the nickname the Phantom Slayer until after the deaths of Booker and Martin. It was an April 16th edition of the Texarkana Daily News, which had the heading, "Phantom Killer Eludes Officers as Investigation of Slayings Pressed." The front page of the story continued on page 2 with the headline, "Phantom Slayer Eludes Police." The Texarkana Gazette contained a small title on April 17th, which read, "Phantom Slayer Still at Large as Probe Continues." J.Q. Maffei, executive editor of the Texarkana Gazette in 1946, said that managing editor Calvin Sultan had an acute sense for the dramatic, which impelled him to ask if they could refer to the unknown murderer as the Phantom. Maffei replied, "Why not? If the SOB continues to elude capture, he certainly can be called a phantom." The only description we have of the killer was given by that of Jimmy Hollis and Mary Jean Larry. They were the only victims to give specific details of the attacker. They described him as being around 6 feet tall. At the time, he was wearing a white mask over his face with holes cut out for the eyes and mouth. Although Hollis believed he was young, dark-tanned, white man, under 30 years old, Larry believed it was a light-skinned African American. With no description of any other instances, it cannot be certain if the same perpetrator or perpetrators were responsible, though it is generally assumed that the crimes were the work of a single individual. Now, the modus operandi established for the killer was that he attacked young couples in empty or private areas just outside city limits, specifically using a .32 caliber pistol. Although the caliber used in the Starks murder was .22, a .32 was still believed to be a majority of lawmen that had been used by the Phantom. He always attacked late at night on weekends, with cooling off periods of about 3 to 4 weeks. Gonzalez stated that he and his officers were dealing with a, quote, shrewd criminal who had left no stone unturned to conceal his identity and activities, and that the murderer's efforts were both clever and baffling. He also stated that the man they were hunting was a cunning individual who would go to any lengths to avoid apprehension. Though the investigations of this Phantom Killer case, almost 400 suspects were investigated. There were numerous false confessions also investigated by police. Police officers recalled 9 people who confessed to being the Phantom, but their statements did not give with the facts. In the Hollis and Larry case, no suspects were apprehended. In the Griffin and Moore cases, over 200 people were questioned, and about the same number of false tips and leads were checked. 3 suspects were taken into custody for bloody clothing, 2 who were released when officers received satisfying explanations. The remaining suspect was held in Vernon County, Texas, for further investigating, but was later cleared of suspicion. A man by the name of Yule Sweeney was a 29-year-old car thief and counterfeiter. He was arrested in July by Officer Taggett, who was investigating car thefts, after realizing on the night of the Griffin Moore murders a car that had been stolen in the area and previously stolen car had been found abandoned. Taggett was also able to locate the former car and arrested Sweeney's wife, Peggy, when she came to retrieve it. Peggy confessed in great detail that Sweeney was the Phantom Killer and had killed Booker and Martin. Her story changed in some details across several interviews, however, and police believe that she was withholding information due to fear of Sweeney or of herself incriminating herself. H.B. Duty Dennison was an 18-year-old university freshman who died by suicide on November 4th, 1948, leaving behind cryptic instructions, which directed investigators to a suicide note in which Dennison confessed to the Booker, Martin, and Stark murders. He had played trombone in the same high school band as Booker, and they were not friends. Investigators were unable to find any evidence linking Dennison to the murders. James Freeman, a friend of Dennison, provided an alibi for the night of the Stark murders, stating that they had been playing cards that evening and they had heard on the news about the attack. Ralph Bowman, a 21-year-old ex-Army Air Force officer, machine gunner, claimed to have awoken from a fugue state for several weeks on the day of the Starks murders, with his rifle missing. He said that he had heard about a suspect matching the description and hitchhiked to Los Angeles, feeling that he was running from murder. On May 23rd, he told Los Angeles police that he had thought he might be the Phantom. "I'm my own suspect," he said. When police arrested him, Gonzalez stated that several parts of the man's story had little basis in fact. Bowman said that he had been discharged from the AAF for being a psychoneurotic and had been previously confessed to 3 other murders of people in Texarkana in a period of 3 days, none of which matched the timeline of the killings. In media, the Texarkana native Charles B. Pierce made the film The Town That Dreaded Sundown, based on Gonzalez's investigation into the murders. Since 2003, it had been screened annually at the Movies in the Park by Texarkana Parks and Recreation. So after media attempts and all the investigations, the prime suspect in the case turned out to be Yule Sweeney, when he was linked to the murders primarily by statements from his wife, plus additional circumstantial evidence. However, after Sweeney's wife refused to testify against him, prosecutors decided against pursuing murder charges. Sweeney was convicted of other charges and was sentenced to a very long prison sentence. 2 of the lead investigators believed that Sweeney had been guilty of the murders. There were a few books by some of the investigators, one called The Phantom Killer, Unlocking the Mystery of the Texarkana Serial Murders, and was written by the nephew of Sheriff William Hardy Bill Presley, which concludes that Sweeney was the culprit. And as mentioned before, the events inspired the works of the 1976 film The Town That Dreaded Sundown. However, the film is also a basis of much subsequent myth and folklore around the murders. And there you have it. The Texarkana murder mystery has not been solved until this day. With a total of 8 victims and 5 deaths, the unidentified killer still remains at large. And that concludes our Summer of Love series, episode 1. Stay tuned for our next episode, The Monster of Florence. Thank you for listening. Good night.
Thank you very much for listening tonight and being part of the Mythical True Crime community, hosted by me, DJ. Subscribe to Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get your weekly updates. And if you like what you hear, consider subscribing. Subscribing will directly support the show and the work that I'm doing. If you'd like to be a new supporter, consider clicking the link in the description box below. For less than a cup of coffee a month, you can help me continue to make great content for listeners everywhere. No commitment, cancel anytime. This has been the Mythical True Crime Podcast. My name is DJ. Good night.